Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. We're going to hear from another of the firefighters in just a moment, I think.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we're going to hear from Watch Manager Glynn Williams now, if the witness can please be called.
Very much. Certainly.
So look in your right hand and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sit down and make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Millett, when you're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Williams,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Williams, I wonder if I can ask you to give the inquiry your full name, please.
It's Glynn Williams.
Right. Now, thank you very much for attending today, I should say, first of all.
Just pause, Mr. Millett. Is that troubling you, that
It's
fan?
quite loud. Am I able to turn it down?
I'm sure we can turn it off if you'd rather.
Well, it's just quite difficult.
No, well, you need to hear the questions. You're quite right. Could one of the ushers help with the fan, do you think? If you find it gets too warm, of course you can ask us to turn it
absolutely.
on again. But
Can I just move the fan? I can't
Move
hear
it.
I suggest you turn it off, actually.
Or turn it down or something.
Yes, I need remote.
They might need it more than me.
You know how it works, of course.
That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Right. Okay. Can I start by saying thank
No,
you very
can't
much?
stop. Sorry, Mr. Millett, I keep stopping you. But
That's right.
No, are you comfortable that they're
I've
just
just
doing...
unplugged it because apparently it sometimes otherwise interferes with the microphone.
All right.
So I've unplugged it.
But anyway, at the moment, you're content with the way things are? Good. Right, Mr. Millett, I'm sorry.
That's right, thank you. All I wanted to do was to thank you to start with for coming here today and assisting us with our inquiries. We are very grateful to you. Can I start by asking you to go to your statement, please, which is dated the 14th of December 2017. Now, you should have it in a file in front of you. And the reference to it is MET quadruple 08045. Can I ask you first, have you read it recently, Mr. Williams?
I have, yes.
Can you confirm that its contents are true?
The contents is true. However, when reading it recently, I noticed that there's some typos in it.
Yeah,
So if it comes up, we can
certainly.
correct it.
Certainly. And have you discussed your statement or the evidence that you are going to give to us today with anybody else before coming here?
No.
Right. Now, you should have a contemporaneous note as well, which is at the next tab in the little file, which is MET 000130095. Can you confirm that that is yours?
I can, yes.
And can you tell us when you wrote that, please?
I believe I wrote it the day after my birthday.
Right.
I think I've stated in it somewhere when I wrote it.
Okay, but not immediately after the night.
No.
Okay. Now, you've also exhibited, I think, 3 exhibits, GM2, 3 and 4. GM2, and I won't ask you to look at those now, but I'm going to read them into the record. GM2 is a hand-drawn map of Grenfell Tower, or the area, which is MET 000130096. GM3 is another map, MET 000015613. And GM4 is a hand-drawn diagram of the Bridgehead, MET 000130093. And those are now in the record. And the reason I do that, Mr. Williams, is so that you can identify those and that the public can then see them. Are you content that those are your documents?
Oh. Yeah, I am.
That's it. Thank you. Can I start then by asking you some questions about your career with the LFB and some questions about training? You joined the LFB in, I think, January 2000, as you say in your statement.
I joined in September 2000. I was posted to Lambeth Fire Station
Yeah.
in January 2001.
Yes. And cutting a long story short, you were promoted to Red Watch Manager, I think, in January 2016 at Fulham.
I was.
And was that your role on the night of the fire, or your position on the night of the fire?
It was.
Since then, I think you say that you've been further promoted. Is that right?
It is, in the fire brigade, it's a promotion of responsibility more than anything. So Fulham Fire Station is a one appliance fire station,
Yes.
which is a watch manager A, is the rank that is in charge of that. I'm now at Soho Green Watch, which is a multi-appliance station, so it's a watch manager B.
Right. And how long have you been at Soho Green Watch?
Since February this year.
Since February this year.
That's right.
Now, at the top of page 2 of your statement, if you just turn to that, please, you, you say that in the summer of 2017, you attended back-to-basic training sessions provided by the local authority on how to respond to a high-rise. And I should just say, when I take you to your statement or any document, it may be helpful for you to use the screen on the desk on your right rather than your own written statement in paper form. It's up to you how you want to do that.
Yeah.
But just looking at the sentence you put in your statement there, first of all, when in the summer of 2017 did you receive that back-to-basic training? Do you remember?
So the typo that I referred to at the beginning was there's two here.
Ah, okay.
So it's the summer of 2016.
2016,
And
right.
the training was provided by the authority, not the local authority, as in the London
Right.
Fire Brigade.
Okay. Can you tell us what that training consisted of?
It was a LFB organised training event where they organised, from recollection, it was a combined comms session which also included a training for the firefighters in establishing a bridgehead. So it was a simulated exercise. I attended Hammersmith Fire Station and the firefighters went off to establish a simulated bridgehead, and the watch officers would participate in essentially a comms exercise, managing the incident from removed from the actual bridgehead area.
Right.
If that makes sense. So so for the watch officers it was more comms, and for the firefighters it was practical establishing of a bridgehead.
When you say more comms, can we be a bit more specific and try and break it down? First of all, let me just see if I can get at this way. Did you have training on communications between the control room and the bridgehead?
It's vague. It's a vague memory, and I don't want to say something I didn't do. It was along the lines of communicating with the bridgehead,
Right.
and as a removed watch officer.
As a removed watch officer.
Yeah. So a scenario might be that you are based on the ground floor and you're communicating as an incident commander, and you're communicating with a watch officer at the bridgehead. So it was a what do you call it? Like a dialogue that you go through, like a series of scenarios that you go through.
What radio equipment
Handheld
were you
radios.
trained on?
Handheld radio.
Handheld radios. Did any part of that training in that back to basics set of sessions involve training on communicating fire survival guidance calls?
No.
Okay. Now, in your statement, you continue in the second paragraph on that page to say, throughout my career, I have received training for pre-prepared planning should compartmentation fail. Now, that's since 2001, is it?
Yes.
Did that training ever include anything about cladding fires?
No.
Did it include anything about how to go about full or partial evacuation of a high-rise block?
No.
Did it include anything about how to communicate or manage fire survival guidance calls?
Well, that came later.
When did that come?
I couldn't give you a specific date, but it wasn't through my career of learning about. My reference to this is when fire breaches the compartment internally.
Yes.
So the effects of secondary gases that emit from a compartment through open doors, through firefighting actions, into, say, a lift lobby, for example, and how to respond to a fire that is spreading internally because of secondary gas ignition. It wasn't, so this was very practical. This was at the Fire Service College. This was real fire training with using combustible products, and it's where we historically carried out our real fire training. We don't have that facility anymore, so it's not training that takes place now.
Right. Just breaking that down a bit, when was this training? Do you remember?
Well, it would have been for as long as the authority we use in the Fire Service College, so it would be from the beginning of my career through to about 2012-ish, maybe. I can't be specific about
Right.
that.
After 2012, did you have any training on how to manage fire survival guidance calls?
I had a computer-based training package.
Where was that delivered?
It was through the London Fire Brigade's online training, and we do a lot of training. A lot of it is scenario based. A lot of it is theoretical. It's very difficult to practically train for fire survival guidance because it takes a lot of resources and a lot of planning to get hold of a block and the people to evacuate or to work along. So it's a computer-based package. It played some recordings about the types of calls that you would hear on fire survival guidance,
Right.
how control would respond to it, and initial actions of incident commanders, and what action should be taken once that information's passed over
Right.
to the incident commander.
Do you remember what the most recent point in time that you had that training was prior to the fire at Grenfell Tower?
I mean, you'd have to refer to my individual training record, but I'm fairly sure that I provided that training to my watch. Although I didn't use that package, I used the training note because the package wouldn't load up due to technical error. So I'm fairly sure that I would have provided that training to my watch, certainly within the period, the year of 27, the beginning of 2017.
Okay.
2017.
2017.
Yeah. We regularly would train at high rise, fire survival guidance, basement. So.
Right. Have you? I'm assuming. Tell me if this is wrong. You've heard of the fire at Lakenhall House.
I have, yes.
Yes. Did any part of that computer-based training train on lessons learned from the Lakenhall House fire, so far as fire survival guidance is concerned?
No, that package didn't focus at all on the Lakenhall House, from recollection. Lakenhall House, we had a separate independent case study on post Lakenhall House, but that was a very long time ago. I can barely remember that.
Right. From what you do remember of the Lakenhall House case study on which you had training, do you remember who delivered that training to you? No. Do you remember do you remember ever getting any training on multiple FSGs?
No.
Okay. Are you familiar with LFB policy number 790, fire survival guidance?
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
Okay. Have you ever received or given training on that policy?
Yes.
You have. Do you remember when the most recent time before
No.
the Grenfell Tower
You'd
was?
have to refer to my individual
Okay.
training record.
If you then just go to page 16 of your statement, please. You say there, and you deal with the question of FSG calls and your experience, and 4 lines up from the bottom of the page 16, you say, I have undergone and presented the training when dealing with FSG calls to my crews, but this does not take into consideration the type of numbers experienced at Grenfell Tower, the FSG training we receive teaches how to coordinate a targeted rescue to people that are unable to evacuate. We're trained to rescue that person and bring them into a safe environment. We do not receive any training that involves taking a person through a toxic environment, 20 plus floors high, and bringing them to a safe environment on ground level. Now, can I just explore one or two things about that evidence that you've given? Do you get, or did you have, as at the night of the fire in June 17, any FSG training on bringing people through smoke log escape routes?
We do not receive training on how to evacuate people
Right.
through a toxic environment.
Okay. Does that include in a high-rise building? Full stop.
Full stop.
Right. Can you explain then what the training is that you refer to in the first sentence that I read out? I have undergone and presented the training when dealing with FSG calls to my crews. What is that training that you've undergone and presented?
So as I just referred to, the computer-based training.
It's that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when you say in the sentence at the top of, or bottom of page 16, top of page 17, we are trained to rescue that person and bring them to a safe environment, what is that training?
Well, that forms part of the response to fire survival guidance being implemented, is that the purpose of fire survival guidance is to, having identified someone who's unable to leave as the effects of the fire, whether it be smoke or flame, we are then informed of their location, their condition, their floor number, flat, and we then have a procedure in which we set into place where we will try to successfully rescue that person and bring them to a safe area.
And does that include a high-rise building?
That does include a high-rise
Right.
building.
So when you, in the last sentence, you say we do not receive any training that involves taking a person through a toxic environment 20 plus floors high and bring them to a safe environment on ground level. What point are you making there? What are you saying?
I think that during the interview with the detective, I was being asked some pertinent questions about specifically to high rise. So I was emphasising that we're not trained we're not trained to do it at all, full stop. But particularly not in high-rise environment.
Right. When you say we're not trained to do it at all, it may be my fault. I'm just not sure I'm understanding you. But you say we're trained to rescue that person and bring them into a safe environment, and you've explained what that is. But then you say you're not trained to do it 20 plus floors high. Does that mean that you get training to rescue people who are trapped, but not high up in a high-rise?
No, it doesn't. It means that if you're at an incident and fire survival guidance is implemented, we don't do any training that would mean that we would take a conscious and breathing casualty into a toxic environment.
Right.
The
Okay.
point about the high rise was just something that was being made clear to the detective. It wouldn't matter if it was a masonette, it wouldn't matter, well, we wouldn't necessarily have a FSG in that situation, but it wouldn't matter if it was a low-rise block or a high-rise block, or if it was masonette flats, scissor flats. The point I was making is that we haven't received training to take a conscious and breathing casualty to a highly toxic environment at all.
Right.
We would, in life-saving situations, of course, we go into fires and we rescue people from fires, and that is a toxic and dangerous, life-threatening situation.
I see.
But that's that's different to the fire survival guidance policy.
Yeah.
That's a different situation.
Yeah. I follow. So it's not so much 20 plus floors high. It's the fact that you don't get trained to bring a conscious and breathing person through any kind of toxic or smoke-logged escape route.
No.
I see. Now, can I then turn to the night of the fire? On the night of the fire, you were, I think we can take this quickly, you were posted to appliance G351.
It was?
and you were mobilised at 1:30:33.
I was.
We can get that from the short incident log at page 8. And from that document also, it says that you arrived on scene at 1:45:27. Does that sound about right to you?
It sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay. En route, and you say on page 4, if I can just quickly show you that. This is paragraph 3 and paragraph 5. You refer to a second make-up and a further make-up. Do you remember what the make-ups were to, in terms of pump numbers?
I think I've struggled to remember this. I think I was ordered on the 8th.
Right.
And I think the next make-up, I can't remember accurately.
Yeah. Well, you say at the top of page 4 that the MDT showed you as mobilised to an 8-pump fire. So that's what's in your statement. That was at 01:19. Do you remember still being en route when it went to make pumps 20 and make pumps 25?
I don't know.
You don't. Do you remember whether you could hear any radio messages coming from control to the fireground about fire survival guidance while you were en route?
I don't know.
You don't. Okay. Now, on page 5 of your statement, halfway down the page, in the 4th paragraph, you say, I walked to Mike, and this is after you arrive, obviously. I walked to Mike, who said, Glynn, I don't know what the fuck happened. Mike had a look of shock on his face. I told him it was going to be all right and that we were all here to help. How soon after you arrived do you think you spoke to Mike Dowden?
Within 5 minutes?
Right.
Ish?
Okay.
Between 5 and 8 minutes?
Right.
Because we were gathering equipment. Between 5 and 8 minutes.
Okay. Did you know when you spoke to him that he was incident commander?
Yes.
Okay. How did you find that out?
Because I'd heard the initial messages from Watch Manager Dowden at Make Pumps.
Right.
So I would have, and then circumstantially, I know Mike is the watch manager at North Kensington because I used to work with him at North Kensington. So
Okay.
it wasn't verbally confirmed, but I
Right.
had a good knowledge that he probably was in charge.
Okay. All right. Did you know that he'd been incident commander right from the start?
I didn't know, but I would accurately assume he had been.
Yeah. Did you know that he was still incident commander when you went to speak to him?
Yes.
You did. Did he? How could you tell?
He was the only watch manager there. He was the only officer I could see.
Right. Okay. Was he wearing an IC tabard?
I think he was, yeah.
Right. Did you take any kind of briefing from him, do you think?
No.
Did you have a discussion about FSGs?
No.
Did you have a discussion about evacuation of residents?
No.
Could you see any... When you had the discussion with him, where were you standing, do you remember?
When we passed those words,
Yes.
he was about, from recollection, he was about 20 metres away from the front of the entrance.
20 metres from the... In which
Roughly.
direction? Okay.
Headed in the direction of the covered area.
Right, okay. So immediately opposite the entrance?
Kind of at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock from the entrance?
Yeah.
Right, so if the entrance is noon, 10 o'clock is where you were standing?
Have you got a map? I'll show you on the map. If you were standing with your back to the entrance,
Yes.
it
Right.
was about 10 o'clock.
Got it. So back to the entrance, 10 o'clock. So towards the southeast of the tower. Fine.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't know.
We can look at the map if you want, but I just wanted to make sure I knew. Did you look up at the tower?
Yes.
Could you see the fire?
Yes.
And what do you remember? How far do you remember that it spread?
As I've said in my statement, I'd have to refer to my statement, so I'm not inaccurate.
Yeah. Okay.
But I had a good look at the fire.
Right. Did you see or happen to see any residents self-evacuating or coming down the stairs out of the building?
No, at that stage, no.
Right. Okay.
They may have passed me, but I wasn't paying particular attention to the people evacuating. I was paying attention to the fire.
Right. Now, at the bottom of page 5 of your statement, you say, "My crew and I made our way to the main entrance of the tower. Before walking into the tower, I stopped just short of the canopy and had a good look at the fire. I had a diagonal upward view of the front and right side of the tower, peering round." And then you say, "I could see flames sweeping round to the back, almost wrapping round the tower like a whirlwind of fire. The flames were aggressively climbing upwards, which was an unusual fire reaction to see. It looked as if gases were emitting from the building due to the heat. I have seen fire reacting to gases under pressure before, but not to this scale." I read all that to you because I have a number of questions about what you saw. Do you think you actually saw any gas-like substances or gaseous reactions?
Sorry, what's the question?
Did you think you saw gas or gas combustion?
What I mean by gases is that when you burn a product, irrespective of whether it's a combustible, whatever the combustible product is, but particularly man-made fibres, that they emit gases that become flammable, that are flammable when heated to a certain temperature. They all have different ignition rates. My reference to the gases is that the aggressive flame seemed to be slightly set back, so it's obvious that there's something alight, but the anger in the fire, the way it's responding, the way it's under pressure, was similar to the way that fires respond where the gases are igniting.
Right.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you think it was?
Well, I had a knowledge of the ground because I'd been stationed at North Kensington for 5 years prior to going to Fulham. And locally there's 2 blocks that have got solar panels up one face of the building.
Yeah.
So initially I was looking at it and I was trying to see if it might be solar panels because I couldn't work out what on earth it could be like.
Right.
It was quite unusual. The colour of the flame was unusual. The whole way it was responding was unusual. I know it sounds a bit daft, but
No, it doesn't.
We pay particular attention to how fire is acting.
Sure.
And the way that the fire's responding and the way that the smoke is igniting and pluming. And on this night, it was very unusual. Nothing I've ever seen.
What was the colour of the flame?
So obviously, the further away from the building you got, the more oxygenated it got. So it was a bright orangey red flame. But I did notice that closer to the building, as I was looking up at it, it was less oxygenated. So it was more. It was a lot. I don't know how to describe it. It was like under pressure. It was under pressure, so it was like a little Bunsen burner, if you imagine. It was. If you turn a Bunsen burner, so it's not on a jet. At the bottom, it doesn't look so close to the actual Bunsen, does it? But then the further out it gets, nice orange flame. It looked similar to that. I can't. The flame colour was difficult to identify the colour of the flame closer to the building because of the amount of fragments that were falling off and the smoke. There's heavy smoke coming off of it. So, which are the gases? And then it was the gases that were igniting afterwards.
Right.
And that's what created this kind of blanket of fire going around it.
Okay. And when you say the smoke was, the flames were sweeping around to the back, does that mean another face of the building or
I can't.
something else?
Well, I was at the front.
Yes.
to my right was the side, and it looked like the flames were lapping round.
Round the corner?
Yeah.
Right. Whereabouts on the building did you see the flames lapping round? At the top or the bottom or the middle or somewhere else?
When initially, when I first arrived, it was the right hand. It was kind of. It hadn't. It was kind of going in a diagonal direction. It'd gone up. It'd gone up in like a straight line.
Yes.
And then it was kind of looked like the wind was taking it in a diagonal direction. I mean, I
Right.
can't be sure that it was the wind, but
Okay.
if metaphorically it looked like it had gone like that.
Yes. And you were standing 10 o'clock to the tower with Mike Dowden, and the diagonal was coming in which direction relative to you?
So going away from me.
Going away from you. Okay.
So going towards Latimer Road Station,
Yes.
like that.
Yes,
Up
yes.
and round.
Right. And did you notice what was happening at the top of the building?
No,
Okay.
it was, I couldn't see the top of it. Well, I could see, but you couldn't.
Right. Now, you told us earlier you hadn't had any training on cladding fires. Were you aware or did you have any thoughts at the time that this might be a cladding fire? In other words, the external envelope of the building igniting?
The answer is no, because I would have thought that an external part of the fire would not ignite to that severity. So no, it wasn't in my thought process.
Right. Had you, out of interest, had you heard of a fire at Shepherd's Court in the August
I
of
was there.
2016? You were there.
Yeah.
At what stage in the incident were you at Shepherd's Court?
I got there. Can't remember.
Okay.
The command and control had been established, so I must have got there
Right.
a bit later on.
When you arrived at Grenfell and you could see what was happening, did you have any thoughts that it might be something like Shepherd's Court?
No.
No. Did you ever get any training or ever hear any intelligence or even mess table gossip about Shepherd's Court and the lessons learnt from it?
What do you mean?
Well, okay, let me break that down a bit. Did you ever get any formal training about what had happened at Shepherd's Court and the lessons to be taken away from it?
No. I don't recall getting any formal training. Doesn't mean that they didn't provide it, I just don't recall receiving it. You'd have to check my individual training record, but I
No.
don't.
Okay. Well, let me just check one thing, because
Yeah, please
you were
do.
there. Can I ask you to be shown the...
I hope we're talking about the same incident.
yes.
Shepherd's
well,
Court and Shepherd's Bush Green,
Yes.
where the appliance was alight and it went out the window. Is
Yes.
that the one?
That's the one.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think we are talking about
Yeah,
the same.
good.
Let me just see if we can come to a full stop on this. If you could be shown, please, tab 10 of the documents bundle, which is LFB 3521, the tall buildings facades slideshow. I just want to be sure. This is dated 13th of July 2016 on its face, but we were told that in fact it was finalised in the October of that year, which is not surprising because the fire was in the August, so it can't have been July, so ignore the date. But is this a document, just looking at the front, you might have ever seen before?
No. I've seen it.
And then let's just turn the pages very quickly. Page 2 and page 3. Page 2 is fire, Grosny, the address Dubai, and Tamwheel Tower. These are all exterior fires.
No.
No? Okay. Finally then, because if that doesn't ring a bell, I suspect the conclusion won't, but let me take you to it anyway. If you could please turn to page 25, general conclusion. As a general principle, the external envelope of the building should not contribute to the fire spread along the facade. New construction material and method of construction are being used in facades, and with a limited understanding of their fire behaviour or performance, there is a need to understand what products are being used in the facade system and their fire behaviour, and if they are used appropriately and meet the relevant guidance. These could affect the way fires develop and spread in a building. That general conclusion, the specific question is, have you ever had training on those general conclusions after August 16?
No.
Right. Okay, we can put that away. Now, at the stage you're looking up at the building and going back to where we were, and your description of the fire, did you have any thoughts about whether compartmentation had failed or not? At
No.
that point? No. Did you think the fire could still be fought?
Yes.
How did you think that the fire could still be fought? In what way?
Well, the TL was already working. And we don't approach fires thinking we can't fight them. We approach fires thinking we can fight them.
Right.
So it's not a conscious thought of this is how we're going to fight the fire and this is how we're going to do it. Or it's if we approached every fire with the conscious thought that we may not put it out, then we wouldn't be doing our job. It's an instinctive thing. It's a reactional thing. We fight fire. We attend fires with the intention to fight that fire. So I'd like to give you a conclusive answer as to how I thought we were going to fight it. We were going to throw everything we've got at it. That's what we were going to do.
Right. Were you aware at that time of a specific strategy or plan for fighting this fire?
No.
Did you ask Mike Dowden what is the specific strategy or plan for fighting this
No.
fire? Is there a reason why you didn't have that conversation with him?
He was the incident commander, and I could see through the glass that people were being committed. As I understood it, once I arrived at the Bridgehead, I'd have a better idea of what the plan was. I thought that at the time, my opinion was that Mike probably had, being a watch officer myself, there's a lot that you've got to do, there's a lot going on. So I would be able to ascertain that information at the Bridgehead.
Okay. You mentioned a turntable ladder fighting the fire. Just help us, where was that physically in relation to the tower?
So if we're looking at the tower,
I don't mind which way we do it, but yes, all right. Looking at the tower.
looking at the entrance, the turntable ladder was to my right,
Yes,
and my recollection was it was on a fairly steep pitch.
right. Could you see it applying water to the facade you were looking at?
I think it was applying water, yeah.
Do you remember how high up the building the water was reaching?
I don't know, I'm afraid.
Right. What effect, could you see what effect it was having on the fire on the exterior?
I wasn't looking at the TL, to be honest. I was looking at what the fire was doing. So my focus of attention was on the fire, not on what
Right.
the TL was doing.
Right.
So I can't answer that either.
Okay. Did you have any thoughts in your own mind about how you were going to extinguish the fire on the exterior at the very top of the building?
No.
So when you say earlier, as you did, we were going to throw everything at it, did you have any thoughts in your own mind about what you would actually do to fight the fire?
When I say throw everything at it, we've got a lot of resources in the armoury of the London Fire Brigade. So that's what I mean by that. We've
Right.
got an awful lot of resources. And my thought was that I wanted to get in and start firefighting, search, rescue and assist in saving life.
Just, I'm sorry to press this a little bit. When you say you've got a lot of resources in the LFB armoury, did you have any thoughts at that time about what resources you would need to get out of the armoury in order to extinguish the fire on the exterior at the very top of the building?
At the time, no, because as I said to you, it's an unconscious process. I'm fully aware of the resources we have, so my observation is not a conscious, right, we need to get this equipment, because that's not my responsibility. Needless to say, if you're asking me to clear it up for the inquiry, we have aerial platforms, we have an abundance of firefighters and fire appliances, and so the senior management coming on would obviously naturally be aware of all the equipment that we've got. We've got highly trained control staff. So no, it wasn't my conscious thought when I was looking at the building, but the London Fire Brigade has a lot of equipment that's being used to fight fire. Historically, we've used it to fight fire, so I assume that, or not assume, I expect that we'll be using that equipment to extinguish fire.
Can you identify for us what piece of equipment would have been able to fight a fire at the top of the upper reaches of Grenfell Tower? So
No.
just so in excess of 60 metres.
No, I can't.
Okay. Now you say, it's still in that paragraph, my crew and I made our way to the main entrance of the tower. How long after your conversation with Mike Dowden, which you say was about 5 minutes after you arrived, do you think you entered the tower?
Oh, a minute.
Right.
2 minutes.
Okay.
2 minutes. 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah. Obviously, it's an estimate at this stage of time, but
The distance to travel from the covered area, stop, look up, look at the fire. I mean, in the cold light of day, the descriptions that we're going through here seem quite prolonged, but they're seconds.
Yes. Can I ask you just to look at a CCTV image, just to see if we can get the timing right? This is INQ 256, Mr. Documents Director. Now, this is a CCTV image from camera 4 with a timestamp of 01:55:57, which, when adjusted, gives an adjusted time of 01:55:21. Now, can you identify yourself in that picture?
I'm the firefighter in the white helmet.
Right, on the left.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you know who the others are?
Yes.
Who are they?
The crew manager on the right-hand side is crew manager Christopher Bachelor,
Right.
and the firefighter in the middle is firefighter Neil Saunders.
Saunders.
Yes.
Neil Saunders.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, I think as part of your crew, you had firefighter Hill as well.
I did.
I don't think we see him in that picture, or do we?
I don't think. I don't think you can. No. I was wondering, is that a reflection on the left there? I think it is, isn't it?
I'm not sure. Is the truth? I think it must be.
It might not be. The firefighters lining up the stairs, so
Yeah.
I don't. I can't.
Well, I was going to ask you
identify.
about that. Well, at that stage, did you see a queue of firefighters in BA
Yeah.
queuing to go to the Bridgehead?
Mm.
Right. And I'll come back to this in a moment. You, I think, then go to the Bridgehead. And at page 6 of your statement, you say, we then entered through the main entrance and into the ground floor foyer. There were a lot of firefighters in the foyer, queued in a single file against the glass wall, up the stairs and across the raised platform of the mezzanine level leading to the single doorway. So looking at that photograph, it may well be that is the tail end of the queue or near it. Is that about right, do you think? Okay. And then you say, stood by this doorway was watch manager Paul Watson, G36. I believe the majority of the firefighters lined up with watch manager Watson were part of his crews from Hammersmith Fire Station. Now, first of all, did you know Paul Watson?
Yes.
On the night of the fire, you knew who he was?
Yes.
Okay. Have you worked with him before?
He's the watch manager at the neighbouring station.
Right.
So we work on incidents regularly.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Now, to be clear, where was watch manager Watson? Well, you say he was stood by the doorway. was that on the second floor or on the ground floor at that point?
You know, the walkway that goes across the walk as you want to enter the building. There's a staircase that goes up to the right, and then there's a walkway that leads to a single door.
Yeah.
He was at the single door on the walkway.
Do you know what he was doing?
Not when I entered, no.
No, okay. Did you greet him in any way?
Yeah,
You did. What did you say?
I said, "What's happening?"
Right. So he was up there and you were where?
No. Sorry, when I entered,
Yes.
I looked up and I went up the stairs. I walked past the fire. My crew followed me. I walked past the stairs. I told them stay by my side. Went up to the stairs. Told them to wait with the crews standing on the mezzanine. Should we call it the mezzanine? Is that what it was?
Yes.
I went to Paul Watson. I said, "What's happening? Where's the bridgehead?" And he said, "It's through the door."
Right. Now, if you go to your second paragraph, that is pretty much what you say. I led my crew passing the line of firefighters up the stairs and the mezzanine level where I spoke to Watch Manager Watson and asked where the bridgehead was. My question really was whether before you got up there you had a conversation with him or greeted him from the ground floor.
No, I think we just acknowledged each other.
Okay, all right. Now, continuing that with that paragraph, you say that he pointed and stated the bridgehead was through the single doorway. And you go on to say, and I summarise it, that you saw that watch managers O'Keefe and De Silvo were managing the bridgehead and entry control. And then you go on to say, I saw watch manager O'Keefe was busy talking to firefighters. Can I just ask you, why did you decide to go straight up to the bridgehead?
What? Rather than what?
Did anybody instruct you to go to the bridgehead?
No.
Right. What were you planning to do at the bridgehead?
Ascertain what the plan was,
Right.
and then be committed to firefight, search and rescue.
Okay. Was there any reason why you didn't ask Mike Dowden what the plan was?
As I said previously, as an incident commander, you've got a lot on,
Right.
and the person who's running the bridgehead will have a plan as to what the purpose behind their commitment of BA.
Yes.
So I didn't need to, I was wearing BA, I was leading my crew in BA, so I was going to the bridgehead to be committed. On our arrival, they'd asked for equipment as well, of which we had with us. So it was common sense more than anything. I mean,
Right.
I'm an experienced firefighter. I don't tend to wait I have enough experience to go and talk to the other officers and ascertain what
Right.
the plan is and how it's going to be put into place.
Okay. And did you speak to Watch Manager O'Keefe?
No, he was briefing a crew.
Right. Do you know, or could you observe whether he was briefing them to do search and rescue or briefing them to do firefighting?
No idea.
Okay.
He was speaking directly to them.
Did you see any crews being deployed with firefighting equipment? Hoses, Halligan bars?
The crew that was being briefed did have some breaking in gear with them, I think. And then I think non-specific people, the firefighters would be carrying like thermal image cameras.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, being committed with equipment.
Right. Now, in the third paragraph, you say, I approached Watch Manager De Silva, who said, we've got a lot of wearers. And you go on to say, I quickly glanced at the ECB that had a number of FF tallies plugged in. My eyes were drawn to the forward information board, as this signified the number of fire survival guidance calls being shared from the command unit to the bridgehead. I was expecting the list of FSGs to be longer. Do you remember how many, roughly, were on the forward information board when you saw it?
I can't give you a number.
Right.
I could estimate there was a list that big.
What would... The witness is holding up his fingers about a foot apart, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that doesn't come out on the transcript. But roughly how many would that signify?
can't give you an accurate number. Best guess would be maybe 10.
Right. Okay.
But like I say, that is a best guess.
Now, you say in the last sentence of that paragraph, I was expecting the list of FSGs to be longer. Why were you expecting the list to be longer?
Because the right side of the building was alight.
Right. At that point, had you heard any FSG messages being transmitted either over the mainstream radio or on your fireground radio?
There was a lot of traffic on the fireground radio. So no, I was concentrating on my current environment, trying to ascertain what the plan was,
right,
what was going on.
Right.
So I was not concentrating on my handheld radio. It's feasible there could have been information being passed, but I wasn't listening to it.
Now, you say that you were expecting the list to be longer because the side of the building was alight.
Yeah.
So, your expectation was it that the list would actually be very much longer than 10 or so?
Yeah, I mean, for the severity of the fire on the outside versus the number of FSG, yeah, I assumed it would be, or not assumed, but anticipated it would be longer.
Yeah. And would that mean that you thought that many people, lots of people, in other words, more than was on the FIB, would be trapped in their flats and requiring FSG?
My conscious thought at that moment was the fire on the outside can't have been breaching the inside. So that was my thought process.
Right.
So we've got this severe fire, and because of the low number, then it must not have broken into the internal of the
Right.
of the building. Let me reiterate, this is split-second thinking.
Of course.
It changes. It was incredibly dynamic.
Yes, I understand.
Nothing I've ever experienced. So as we decipher this today, we're going through second-by-second thought processes.
Yes.
But I can assure you that the dynamic of that incident was rapidly changing.
Yes. So when, just coming back to your answer a minute ago, you say it can't be breaching. When you say I was expecting the list of FSGs to be longer, was that expectation based on the fact that actually you had expected the fire to be breaching into the interior?
I was expecting that a fire of that severity would burn a window out, for example,
Yeah.
would be entering via, would be breaching the internal aspect of that building more than what was represented on that board. However, that said, I hadn't been given any information at this stage. So within a very short space of time, it became apparent that, you know, we needed to continue working rapidly because the incident was changing rapidly.
Did you have a discussion with Watch Manager De Silva about the number of FSGs she had on her
No.
FIB? Now, in paragraph 4 of your statement on the same page, page 6, you say that you walked back out of the single doorway where Watch Manager Watson was accompanied by a station manager. I do not know the station manager's name. The station manager asked what I was doing, from which I informed him I was waiting to be tasked. The station manager then said, "I've got a job for you, you won't need that," pointing at my BA set. I took off my BA set and handed it to a firefighter carrying a second set bag. I then instructed my crew to remain and waited to be committed. Just on the second set bag there, what is that?
It's a bag that can be used to safely transport an additional breathing apparatus set, so it can be used.
Right. Do you know how many second set bags there were at the Bridgehead when you were there?
No.
No. Was this the only one you saw, do you think?
It's the only one I saw.
Right, okay.
At that stage.
Right, Okay.
And that particular part of my statement, as I said, this could probably be backed up by the CCTV footage, because I'm not sure if I took my set off at that stage or just before I started the fire survival guidance, but you certainly would see it as part of the CCTV footage.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll come to some CCTV shortly. Do you remember how much time you spent at the Bridgehead or on the second floor balcony before you left and went downstairs with the station manager?
It felt like a very short space of time.
Okay. Do you remember what the station manager wanted you to do?
No idea.
Did you ask him?
I said, what's my job?
And he said...
Follow me.
And you did?
And I did. I did it on time. I'm very obedient.
Now, you say, I do not know the station manager's name. What was he wearing a white helmet?
He was.
Is that how you knew he was a station manager?
Yes.
Was he wearing a tabard?
I can't remember. If he was wearing a tabard.
Right. Does the name station manager Brett Loft mean anything to you?
It wasn't Brett Loft. I know Brett Loft.
Right. It was not him. Does the name station manager Andy Walton mean anything to you?
It could be. I know a lot of officers, having been in the brigade a wee while.
Yeah.
I don't know Andy Walton, but it could have been him. It could have been him.
Right. Okay. He's been described by other watch managers physically, and I'm not sure it's appropriate to use that. Could you describe the watch manager that you were led by?
He was smaller than me.
Right.
Brett Loft is about the same height as me.
Right.
He was quite loud.
Right. Was he wearing his helmet on his head?
He was.
Right.
Okay.
Now,
it's really hard to tell the difference between people you don't know in fire uniforms, because we don't wear name badges. We've got nothing other than rank markings.
No.
And rarely people introduce themselves. They're so rude.
Yes. Okay.
Do you think it would help if you had your name stuck on your tunic somewhere?
It would be a great help if you could identify individuals, even by number. I mean, I know it's a bit archaic, or letter, or something.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to distinguish firefighters.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why LFB doesn't mark its firefighters?
You'd have to ask the LFB.
Right. Well, I am. That's why I'm asking you.
I'm afraid I am not of the authority to answer that.
All right.
I don't know.
Now, Andy Walton has given us a statement, which we'll have to explore with him, but he says that when he was at the Bridgehead, he was asked by, he says, an Irish watch manager, who we imagine to be Watch Manager O'Keefe, to be the BA Resources Officer, and that you were to work with him. Although he says you were a crew manager. Does that accord with your recollection in any way?
No.
Okay. He also says that he asked you to go and speak to who was running the balcony and confirm how many BA wearers you had at that time on standby. Again, is that something you recall yourself?
No.
Right. Now, if you please go to page 7 of your statement. At the very top, you say that you recall speaking with DAC O'Loughlin, who said, you go with him and support him. You say, I then took off my helmet and said, Andy, it's Glynn. He looked at me and said, oh, God, Glynn. Now, clearly you know DAC McLaughlin.
I do, yeah, very well.
Do you know, or did you know, whether he was incident commander by this point?
I hadn't been given a verbal confirmation, but I knew that there were a lot of appliances there. He is a Deputy Assistant Commissioner. It would make sense that he was on the outside of the building running. He would be the incident commander.
Right.
It didn't. The fact that we'd had to report that I'd followed the station manager to report to him.
Okay. Was he wearing an IC tabard, the white
I
tabard?
can't remember.
Do you know, did you see him speaking to Mike Dowden at that point?
No.
Okay. Do you know what he wanted you to do?
He said, follow him.
Right, so you followed the station manager?
I did.
Back into the tower?
I did.
Did you hear a discussion about...
I couldn't hear what they were discussing. I was looking at the tower while they were talking.
Right, okay. Now, in paragraph 3 on page 7, you say, as we stood by the doorway that led to the bridgehead, we were met by Group Manager Richard Welch. Welch turned to me and said, I want you to set up FSG on that wall down there. And he, pointing at the wall on the foyer, left as you enter the main entrance. Roughly how soon after coming back down from the second floor do you think you did that? You went back into the doorway?
I should imagine it was would be less than between 5 and 10 minutes. I
Right,
don't know.
and you'd gone back up to the second floor by this stage?
I had.
So he was pointing down?
He was pointing down to the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did you know what Richard Welch's role was at that stage?
I didn't know. I was surprised to see him to be tasked by a group manager.
As opposed to what?
Well, it's the first time in my experience to have a group manager at the Bridgehead tasking. So
Right.
I was surprised it was a group
Okay.
manager tasking the
Right. Given that you'd seen DSA O'Loughlin there, and were now being tasked by a group manager, did that give you any idea of what the command structure was at that point?
Yeah, it would give me a good idea that there clearly was a command structure in place. I wouldn't have known the specifics,
Okay.
but it gave me a good idea that there was a command structure in place.
Okay. Now, you say that he wanted you to set up FSG on that wall down there. What did you understand him to mean by that instruction?
Well, I understood it to that if FSG had been implemented and we needed to start collating the information to prioritise rescues.
Did he tell you about how FSG information had been collated up to that point?
No.
Did you know how many FSG calls had actually been received by that point, even
No.
roughly? Do you know how many crews had been committed at that point to carry out rescues?
No. I could only tell by the tallies that a lot of BA had been committed.
Right. Do you know did you know what system existed by which FSG was being communicated to the Bridgehead?
No.
Did you ask? Did you ask Group Manager Welch any of those questions?
I didn't know.
Okay. Just standing back for a moment, is setting up FSG something you'd ever done before?
I have done it before, yeah.
You've done, when you say you've done it before, at what sort of incident?
A much smaller scale incident.
Right. And did that involve recording FSGs on a wall?
No. It included using the forward information board to collate information
Right.
and confirm when a successful rescue had been taking place.
Right. How many FSGs did that involve? Do you remember?
5. I think.
Right. How long ago before Grenfell Tower was that incident?
Approximately 3 years,
Right.
2 years.
Okay.
I can't be
The-
specific.
The collation exercise at that incident you just mentioned, can you just describe that for us?
It was a far simpler. There had been a fire. Smoke had affected the common hallway. People had rung up, reporting fire survival guidance. They were told the information that they to stay on the line and we would be with them shortly. And it was just the smoke cleared, the fire was extinguished fairly quickly, and the smoke was, we did some, we ventilated the common hallway
Right.
very quickly, but nevertheless, because fire survival guidance procedure had been implemented at control level, we had to run with the process and then successfully bring them out.
Right.
I might add, we didn't bring them out into a smoke-filled environment. We waited until the fire was out, and then we had BA crews go and escort them.
Was that a high-rise incident?
It was, I think it's classed as high-rise because it was above 6 floors, but I think it was maybe about 6 floors. So it's classed, it's categorisation within the fire brigade is that it's a high-rise, but it wasn't. I think it was on the 5th floor.
Right. And can you remember what the chain of communication was between the control room and the Bridgehead at that incident?
Well, we were running from the outside. I don't think they'd set up a Bridgehead because of might have been on the 4th and the common hallway was on the 5th, but they hadn't set up the Bridgehead. They were running from the ground floor.
Right.
So it was initially, it was the communication between the driver of the incident command pump to the incident commander. So we followed the procedure to the letter, and then once the command unit arrived, they applied their resources to it.
Right.
But in all honesty, it was resolved very quickly.
Okay. So you were using a forward information board at that stage, at that incident?
Yeah.
And
I think it might have been quite close. My recollection is that oh no, I wasn't using a forward information board actually. I don't think I was using it. I think we were collating information on a notepad at that stage. I don't think we had the forward information board at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
A notepad.
Yeah.
Would that be a fireman's notepad 3x2 or a control information form? Notepad?
The information was coming in on a control information form, and I believe I was probably taking notes, keeping the slips and taking notes. Are we talking about? We're talking about the incident, my previous experience.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would have kept the slips, and I would have been taking notes about the success, which flats we'd got to.
Right. So I'm sorry to keep on about this. Previous
Casualty
incident.
information, not the control information form.
Yes.
Is what relays the information from the incident command pump to the incident commander and tells us
Yes.
who has called for fire survival guidance.
Yes.
And then we commit our resources to attend to that.
Yes.
And then as a result, I believe I took notes on my notebook.
Yes.
As I said earlier, the incident was resolved very quickly. So all at once, all of the residents were brought out at the same time.
Right.
But I don't believe we had a forward information board at that stage because I was based at North Kensington, and I don't. From recollection, we didn't take receipt of a forward information board until I was at Fulham.
Right.
So,
Do you remember how the information was coming to you at that incident from the incident command pump or the command unit? Was it by radio or was it by control information?
we were
form?
working quite closely to one another.
Okay.
It was a completely different scenario, and it's fairly vague.
Right.
I wouldn't want to tell you something that's not accurate.
Now, that links, I think, back to page 7 of your witness statement, because you say in the same paragraph, it's the third one down, FSG calls are normally recorded on the forward information board, but on this occasion, due to the volume, an entire wall had to be used as the board was not big enough. Was using the wall something that Group Manager Welch told you to do?
Yeah.
I see. And did you have a conversation with him about how many FSG calls or the volume of FSG calls were coming in?
No.
Was he the one who said to you, you'll need the wall, the entire wall, because of the volume that are coming in?
No, I think as that reads, that normally you would use the forward information board to collate the information.
Yeah.
But when this statement was written, obviously, I had participated at Grenfell. So I'm saying to you, due to the volume in which we took the fire survival guidance calls, we used the entire wall.
Right, I see.
I didn't know at the time that we would use the entire wall.
Yes, I see. Now, it's my fault. I've asked you a question, I think, which assumes that you were given an instruction to use the entire wall, but I think you're saying you weren't.
No.
Okay. You then say it became apparent that the FSG had to be recorded in the foyer as they were running out of space upstairs. How did you know that they were running out of space upstairs?
I've just been in, seen them.
Right. So that's something you observed?
When I went into the Bridgehead and my eyes were drawn to the forward information board,
Yes.
that was the area in which they were conducting their work,
Yes.
and they didn't have a lot of space.
You said that, in fact, you were surprised that there were so few FSG calls
Yeah.
on Watch Manager De Silva's forward information board. So how does that square with knowing that they were running out of space?
Well, in terms of his direction for me to go downstairs and use the wall, they wouldn't have had that much. They wouldn't have had that space in that area that they were working, because they had BH control boards, they had a staircase, they had BA wearers. They wouldn't have had the space to
I see.
record the information.
So when
I
you
think
say
we may be getting across purposes here. When you talk about not having
Space.
or running out of space, do you mean
Yeah.
physical
Physical
space?
space.
to work?
Physically, they didn't have
Yeah.
enough space to conduct their work.
yeah, okay. So it's not space on the FIB; it's physical space. To do the work.
Generally, yeah.
Right. Did you, when you were last at the Bridgehead, did you see anybody writing FSG on the wall?
No.
Can I just put one photograph to you before the break,
Mm-hmm.
if I may? Mr. Chairman, I've got just 1 minute of questions on, if I may.
Well, are you
I'm
comfortable giving your evidence at the moment?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, you might like to think about running on till 11:30, and we could take a slightly longer break.
Very good.
Would that suit you?
Right, very good. In which case, can I ask you to be shown MET 000013074, which is tab 81 of our documents bundle. It's JOB 8. Now, this is an exhibit to a firefighter called Justin O'Byrne's witness statement, and he recalls this being written on the wall of the Bridgehead while it was on the second floor. Do you recall seeing this?
No. Is that the lift lobby?
Yes.
I didn't go in there.
Right. Now, on page 8 of your statement, and we'll come back to 7 shortly, but just on page 8, you say in the second paragraph, I asked Watch Manager Watson if the Bridgehead was being moved down to the ground floor level, from which he said, no, I don't think so. I assumed the Bridgehead would now be moving down to the foyer next to the wall, but this was not the case. Can you just tell me what prompted you to ask that question?
You would normally run, when fire survival guidance comes in, especially at a high-rise incident, you would normally run the fire survival guidance relatively close to the committing of BA crews.
Yes.
So there's clear communication,
I see.
because you need to correlate. You need to not only be clear and concise about where we're committing our BA crews, because naturally they're risking their lives to save savable life, but also that when we've successfully carried out a rescue, we can identify where they've come from, who they are and where they've come from, because otherwise you're just left with this fire survival guidance that hasn't been, you can neither confirm or deny that they've been rescued.
Yes.
So you would normally keep it fairly close. But by the nature of the incident and the space in which they were working, with the single stairwell, it made sense that when he said no, I it just occurred to me, well, okay, I'll be working down here and we have to make sure that we've got some good, clear lines of communication
Yes.
internally between us.
Yes. And if you look at the third paragraph on page 8, you say normally FSG and Bridgehead run next to each other so information could correlate directly, and that's what you've been telling us, I think. This could not be done in a tower block, as BA crews only have a limited amount of air. Committing them on ground level would waste their air supply. And then you go on to say, conversely, I had to be positioned on the ground floor. This was to minimize the distance the information had to travel from the command unit to me. Did you think at the time that there would be a problem if the FSG correlation or collation exercise and the Bridgehead were separated by 2 floors?
Not at that stage.
Right. Now, in the 4th paragraph, you say that you say, I thought, how was I going to pass the FSG information to the Bridgehead as I would only have one hard copy of the slip?
Mm-hmm.
By slip, what do you mean?
The slip is reference to the control information form.
Right. And does that mean that at the time you were thinking that you would be getting FSG information by CIF, control information form?
Because that's how I was going to do it.
Right. Does that mean that you were not expecting to receive it by radio or any other method of communication?
No, because I was going to implement how we were going to work, how I was going to receive that information, so I knew how I intended to implement my plan.
Right. Now you're asking yourself the question, how am I going to pass the FSG information to the Bridgehead, because you'd only have one hard copy of the slip? Did that present a problem to you, do you think?
No, it just required a bit of a thought.
Right. Okay. Did you share that thought or have a discussion with Group Manager Welch about that?
No.
Right. Now, turning back to page 7 of your statement, you say, concluding your statement, your conversation with Group Manager Welch, you say that he told you to prioritise the calls. This is the second. This is the line above the last line in that paragraph. You say, Group Manager Welch told me to prioritise the calls. He did not specify, but I understood this to mean prioritise the calls in the order in which it is given to me. Did Group Manager Welch explain what he meant by prioritisation?
No.
Did you have any thoughts about prioritisation for the elderly or for children or for people who had difficulties with mobility?
Yeah.
You did? What, did you think about how you were going to prioritise them?
By the nature in which we implement fire survival guidance policy, it's prioritised at control, but then on receipt of information at incident, you would also have to think about how you're going to prioritise it.
Right.
So naturally, now I've been tasked with a job, I'm thinking about how I'm going to implement the best possible way to carry out that job.
Right. It looks from your statement as if Group Manager Welch, as you say, didn't tell you, but you thought he meant prioritise on a first come, first served basis. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yes, but equally, I don't know what's going to come, do I? So
Yeah.
The first control information form might arrive 20 seconds before the second control information form, and the second one might have a lot of casualties that require more attention than the first one, and there's only a 20-second delay. So I could say, well, actually, the vulnerability of this information form versus this information form is that I can commit resources to this one first, and then I'll go for this one. So so although it's been prioritised by control, additionally, as I understand my job, it would be to not just blindly give the forms over with no understanding or knowledge of what the content of the form, but to actually understand and try and prioritise based on vulnerability, just based on mobility, with an understanding of who it is that whether it's children. So yeah, it was a conscious thought.
Okay. Just a couple of things following that up. You said a minute ago in your evidence just now that although it's been prioritised by control, was that your expectation, that control would be affecting the prioritisation?
It's not an expectation. We have policies in place because they form the foundation in which we can be as professional as we are and respond in the way we do. If somebody rings control with reports to a smell of smoke in a block, that would not deem them fire survival guidance. They have to be trapped by the effects of fire. So that is control prioritising the calls that they've received. They are deciding what is deemed as FSG and what is not.
And within FSG, was your expectation or was your understanding of the policy that when you've got a number of FSGs, control would prioritise those, one against the other?
No, I think I've just explained what the prioritising is. If somebody rings up and they're reporting to smell of smoke in a communal hallway versus someone ringing up and saying, I cannot leave my flat because of the effects of fire, one of them, the latter, would be a fire survival guidance. The first one would be advice only.
Where you've got, let me just put the question again, where you've got a number of calls which are rightly deemed by control to be fire survival guidance, within that group, do you expect
No.
them, control to prioritise them?
No. I expect the information to be relayed to either the incident command pump or the command unit for us to implement action.
So who would, okay, so who of those people, incident commander or anybody else at the fireground, would do the prioritisation?
On that night, that was me.
No, who would normally? Who would you expect to prioritise FSG calls as proper FSG calls? Who would you expect?
Whoever is facilitating
Right.
the transfer of the information.
On the night, did you expect that to be you?
Yes.
Right. Did you have any thoughts about approaching this on the basis of prioritising people high up in the building?
I would say that there was a lot of information missing for me to have any conscious thoughts about exactly how I was going to implement this. And as I said already, this is a second by second fast moving incident. Incredibly fast moving. I wanted to set up a clear line of communication between myself and the command unit who was dealing with fire survival guidance, and on receipt of the control information form is when I would have a vague idea as to how that's going to be prioritised. So to put it in perspective, if I didn't receive any FSGs at the very high parts of the block, then I wouldn't have been prioritising to people at the very high of the block.
Okay. We will come to look at some of the slips you saw in due course. Finally, on the question of prioritisation, did anybody ask you to prioritise on the basis of smoke density?
No.
What about proximity of fire?
I wasn't directed to prioritise in any way. I was just, the words prioritised was used, but there was no detail to it.
Okay. Now, coming on to a slightly different topic.
Well, I wonder if that might be a
maybe
good note, would it?
Yes, I was going to come on to implementation, but let's take a break now.
I think it is time we had a break now, Mr. Williams. So we'll stop and resume at 11:45. Give us a reasonable length of time to have a break and perhaps a cup of coffee. Can I ask you please not to talk about your evidence or anything relating to it during the break? And if you'd like to go with the usher now, she'll look after you and we'll start again at 11:45.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 11:45, please.
Yes, can we have the witness back, please?
Yes, he's on his way, I think.
Right.
Seems all right.
Right, Mr. Williams,
Yeah.
happy to carry on. Thank you.
Perfect.
Mr. Williams, thank you for coming back. You mentioned before the break collating fire survival guidance calls at another incident, an earlier incident.
I did.
Do you know where that was?
Best guess, I could say 2014, possibly. It was in Maida Vale.
I was going to ask you where.
I was on the White Watch at North Kensington, and we were attending an incident with the White Watch of Paddington.
Right. Okay. Now, coming on to what you did in terms of implementing the FSG system that you were asked to start, if you go to page 7 of your statement, please, and look at the 4th paragraph down, it says, the radios were so busy that communication between the command unit and I was not going to work, and due to the sheer noise within the tower, you were in danger of getting limited information or no information. I think I should say or. First of all, did you try making radio communication with the command unit at the point you set up by the wall on the ground floor?
No,
Is there a reason why you didn't do that?
because I could hear how congested the radio communications were.
Right. Did you know which command unit at that stage was the operative command unit handling FSG calls?
No.
Okay. The difficulty with communication, you say you knew how congested the radio communications were. Is that because you could hear them on your fireground radio?
Yeah. Have you covered how the handheld radios work? It's a real polite discipline on the fireground, irrespective of the channels that you go through. That we have a handheld radio, and it has several channels. If I press the button to talk, that requires no one else to be pressing that button. So everyone listens, and then people respond. There's a real politeness to it. Mm-hmm. If you press the button when I press the button, no one talks. It interferes with the communication. So you can imagine at an incident of that scale, it was heavily congested.
Hmm.
And it was very difficult to decipher who was who. So, having heard that, having identified that, I decided that I wasn't going to go down that route.
Right. Did you have an airwave radio?
I have a handheld firefighter radio.
Right, not an airwave.
I don't have an airwave radio.
So does that mean that you had no means of being in contact with the control room directly?
No.
Did you know about any dedicated FSG channel that could be used?
I have not been informed of that.
Did anybody tell you that you could use channel 3, for example?
I observed Channel 3, and the same. I heard the same. There seemed to be a lot of radio traffic
On channel 3?
on Channel 3.
Did you know who it was between?
No.
Did it sound...
It seemed, well, it wasn't from me, so
No.
it was between other people.
And did you try to use channel 3?
No, my priority was to set up an effective line of communication between the command unit and myself so we could start implementing fire survival guidance and committing BA crews to save life.
Right. So you then say at the bottom of page 7 that you say a firefighter whose name I do not know was tasked to run the FSG slips from the command unit to me. And you then go on to say, I informed him I was going to be the watch manager coordinating the fire survival guidance within the tower. I instructed him that his job was to go to the command unit and return to me with the slips. I made it clear that he was to come to me and me alone so the FSG calls could be recorded. I told him not to get distracted or lost. Now, I've read that all to you. It's quite a big chunk, but I've got a number of questions. First of all, do you now know who that firefighter was?
No.
Okay. Where were you when you gave him the instruction you record there?
I think we were making our way down the stairs,
Right.
and that's where I showed him. I kind of was signalling to the wall, this
Right.
is where I'll be.
Did you select this firefighter at random, or was he somebody you picked out?
Someone I picked out.
Do you remember?
He was there, he was just there.
Just there. Do you remember whether he had already worn or whether he was in the queue?
He didn't have BA on,
Right.
so my assumption was that he was available.
Right.
Whether he'd worn or not, I was going to use him because I was briefing him.
Yeah, sure. And did you see whether he had a crew manager's helmet on or not?
He wasn't the crew manager.
Right.
If you look at the CCTV, you'll be able, I would more than likely be able to point him out.
Okay, well, we'll come to do that shortly. Did you know whether there was one command unit operating on the incident ground at that stage? In other words, when you started your collation exercise, or whether there was more than one?
I didn't categorically know that there was more than one, but as I said, I've got quite a lot of experience of being on a fire ground. So it's not a verbal confirmation, it is an expectation that there probably would have been more than one.
At the point when you started, or when you gave him this instruction to run slips from the command unit to me, did you know how many pumps the makeup was?
No.
Had you heard the makeup 40?
No.
What makeup did you think it was at that stage?
I didn't know. I was in the tower.
Right. Did you have make any assumptions or have any thoughts about how many CUs would be in attendance?
Well, Andy O'Loughlin was in attendance,
Yeah.
which means that there certainly was more than 12 appliances for
Right.
him to be there. So the natural assumption is if there's more than 10 appliances, there's more than one CU.
Exactly.
And we've got fire survival guidance, and as per policy, a command unit would be
Right.
in attendance to deal solely with fire survival guidance.
Yes. So, given that there would be, as you've just explained, more than one CU in attendance, did you tell the firefighter which command unit to go to?
I think, from recollection, my words to him was find the command unit dealing with FSG, go there,
Right.
collect the I refer to them as slips, collect the slips, come back to me, don't get lost, don't get distracted, come back to me and me alone.
Right.
And I said, and be as quick as you can.
Okay. Over the course of the process while you were doing the FSG calls at the wall, just looking forwards a little bit, how many firefighters or crew managers or officers did you task to go to the command unit and bring back slips?
I only briefed him.
You only
but
briefed him.
What became apparent and was that the volume that came in was nothing I've ever seen. The volume of control information forms for the people that require rescuing, and I had several runners,
Right.
of which I hadn't briefed, but they were coming with slips, with control information forms. So that's not anything that I wouldn't have expected if the command unit had spoken to the firefighter, and the firefighter said, "This is what he's doing. You know, I'm collecting the slips and I'm running them." And I would have expected them to say, "Right, here's more slips to the next firefighter. You will go to," and give them a briefing to come to me with those slips. So it wasn't. I was the sheer volume of people that were calling for fire survival guidance.
Right.
Was unprecedented.
So just to summarise what you've just told us, you briefed one firefighter to find the command unit handling FSG calls, take the slips and bring them to you and you alone. But in fact, more than one firefighter turned up with slips for you.
I think on the second or third occasion, there were more people turning up.
Right. Do you know? Do you know who the firefighter was who came with the first batch of slips?
That's the firefighter I refer to in my statement,
Right.
of which I don't know his name.
Okay. And if you turn to page 9 of your statement, we'll come back and cover 8 later, but looking at 9 in the second paragraph, you say the firefighter tasked as the runner returned very quickly with the first bundle of FSG slips. How quickly? Do you know?
Well, if we were to best guess it took me between 5 and 8 minutes to get from the first command unit to the entrance. So running, if we were to estimate that it might have taken him between 5 and 8 minutes.
Right. And he came back bearing, as I think you just said, the first batch of fire survival slips which you had. Do you know which command unit he went to?
No.
He didn't tell you, did he?
No.
And this was this before you started writing on the wall at 2:15? That he came back with the first batch of slips?
No, once he returned with the slips was the time I commenced writing on the wall. The first thing I wrote on the wall was 2:15, but can I add to that? That 2:15 was not a time that I called out to and said, "What time is it?" And somebody said 2:15, so I wrote 2:15 on the wall.
Right.
It's feasible that time is inaccurate.
I understand. And at that moment, when you wrote 2:15, did you have the batch of slips in your hands that the runner you tasked brought back from the command unit?
I think it was at the same time. I can't remember.
Okay. Now, you go on and say, in the second last line in the same paragraph, in excess of 20 slips were handed to me, ranging from different floors. Prior to the incident, I've never been to an incident where there are more than 5 FSG calls. Now, the slips you're talking about are control information forms. Do you remember what colour the pieces of paper you received from that firefighter in that first batch were?
Predominantly, I was getting the white slips.
Right. You were getting the white slips. Okay. In that first batch, did you get any other slips of paper, such as slips of paper 3x2?
No.
Right. Now, did you know that by about 2:13,
Sorry, 2 what?
2:13,
2:13.
yeah, 2.13, about that time, there was a watch manager standing just outside the tower, starting a system to collect FSG calls from CU7 by radio.
I wasn't there.
Did you know whether there was a watch manager standing outside collating FSG forms and sending the white top copy into the building via a runner?
I wasn't there.
At any stage did you find that out?
No.
Right. Can I ask you to look, please, at LFB 1922 and turn to page 33. Now, we heard evidence last week from a watch manager, Sadler, that he was tasked to set up a point outside the tower and collate FSG forms, which, and I'm summarising his evidence, he got from CU7 on Channel 3 by radio, and then put onto control information forms and sent them into the tower. He sent the white copy into the tower and sent the yellow copy back to the command unit. That, in general, was what he told us. Looking at this one, he marked this number 1 because this was the first one he did, and he marked the time at 2:13, so 2 minutes before you wrote 2:15. And this was for flat 205 on the, he marked 12th floor. Just looking at that, do you recognise that as a document or the sort of document that your runner brought back to you?
So that is stating the obvious, a control information form.
Yes.
That is the information, that is the form that was being used to relay the information that I'd requested from my runner.
Yes.
Has his full control information forms been cross-referenced with the information that was on the forward information board prior to me starting for FSG? It might be worth doing that.
The problem we have, you're asking me an evidential question, which is interesting. The answer is we haven't got a photograph of the forward information board, so I can't answer your question, I'm afraid.
Okay, so I can't comment on this particular bit.
Right.
Respectfully, I got hundreds.
Okay.
I got an awful lot.
Okay.
However, what I would say is that there were numbers on the forward information board that night, as I've mentioned.
Yeah.
And very close to a very close timescale to starting the fire survival guidance collation on the wall, I instructed a crew manager, I believe, crew manager Battersby, to go and get the forward information board to make sure that there was no misunderstanding about the information that they had prior to my commencing of FSG versus the information I was receiving. So I would think that if this has been written before I've even started, my runner, I think there might be cross paths somewhere. I don't recall this. I can't comment on this particular piece,
right.
But I did take information off the forward information board so that there was no misunderstanding as to the information I'd collated.
Right. Okay. Now, just talk me through this. So you asked crew manager Batterby, is this right, to go to the Bridgehead? Sorry, let me start again.
Yeah.
Where did he get the forward information board that you looked at from?
So the information board that we've referred to earlier on when we've spoken about the Bridgehead, and I mentioned that I was surprised by the number of FSGs on there because there didn't seem to be that many. I can't remember how soon after I started the collation of information, but Charlie turned up and I said to him, Charlie, go and get the forward information board so we're not duplicating information. So it's feasible that what you've got here on these control information forms was information that had been passed to the Bridgehead prior to me starting FSG.
Right, now I'm just interested in Charlie Batterby getting the forward information board. Where did he get it from?
He got it up from the stairwell that we referred to earlier on in my statement.
So he actually took the forward information board from...
He brought it back down to me.
Right.
And I had it to the right of me so that I could correspond the information.
And did that mean that there was a forward information board missing from the Bridgehead after that?
Well, they're perspex sheets. So it would mean that one of the perspex sheets had been brought down to me to collate the information.
Right, and did you send the forward information board back up to the Bridgehead after you'd used it?
It's a perspex sheet, so there's several perspex sheets. It's just one of the perspex sheets that they had collated FSG information. and brought it down to me.
Yes, but the information...
No, I didn't return it to them.
Right. And what... So would that mean that the Bridgehead was then without that information?
It would mean that they were without the initial list that they wrote, yeah.
Did you think how they were going to work without that initial list, if they hadn't already deployed crews and had crews back responding to those, to the FSG calls on that initial list?
Within the times that we're talking about, if we were to say it was within 20 minutes, the crews that they would have entered at the time in which they received that information would have been coming out because they would have used their air. So, no. I was collating the information so that we would have an accurate understanding of the FSG at that incident at that time.
Right. What would happen, though, if the Bridgehead hadn't yet committed crews in response to an FSG call recorded on the forward information board when the forward information board was brought down to you?
Well,
how would they know?
Well, we seem to be moving a bit quick here. So once that information was down, I then started my communication with Paul Watson, and we then went through the process. So I had control information forms and cross-checked them to the forward information board, and anywhere where there was a duplicate, it was obvious that that was being dealt with. They'd been ticked. I believe the ticks represented committing of BA on the forward information board. So it wasn't that they hadn't been acted upon. I knew they'd been acted upon by the Bridgehead. So the information hadn't disappeared. It was just we were creating a different communication because obviously everything's been moved. What I didn't want, what was really important, was to not have some information in a different location. It was important I had the information so that I could clearly and concisely communicate that to the Bridgehead when asked.
Now, did you notice any runners going past you to the Bridgehead holding slips at any stage?
No, because but once within the few minutes of setting up everything, Paul Watson was situated on the balcony, I was situated on the ground floor, and we had a system in place so they wouldn't have got to the Bridgehead because
Right.
Paul was there.
Now, you said that although you tasked one firefighter to go to the command unit and bring you back slips, in fact, other firefighters also brought you slips.
They did.
Did you find out where they'd got their slips from?
The sheer fact that it's being written on a control information form signifies to me it's coming from the command unit. The reason I implemented that form of communication is because I weighed up the risk versus benefit of using handheld communication. And I was not happy that I would get clear, concise, accurate information. So, hence the reason I used a runner. And then more runners were involved. That way, I've got a hard copy that I can refer to, and I've got a way that I know, to the best of my knowledge, that is coming from a command unit that is speaking directly to control. Mm-hmm. There's no misunderstanding there. If you say to me now that there was FSG being collated outside, I didn't know that at the time.
Does it surprise you to find that out?
I would have to know the full in-depth briefing that they were provided. I'm sure that there was sense to what they've been asked to do, but my knowledge at the time, at the incident, was that it was on a control information form that must have been written at a command unit, who must have been on the phone to
Right.
control, to FSG, to the FSG caller.
So if I got this right, even though you were getting slips, white slips, from more than one runner, more than the one runner you tasked, is this right, always thought that those slips were coming direct to you from the command unit?
Yes.
Did you never asked any of the runners, apart from the runner you tasked, where are you getting these slips from?
No, because I tasked him to go to the command
Yeah,
unit.
but the other ones who were turning up.
No, because
slips.
because the training we've done, admittedly not to this level, but it says we train to go to the command unit, receive the information, or use handheld radios, and I'd chosen not to use that form of communication. So it's not an assumption; it is a matter of fact that that's the way in which we receive the information.
Right.
Is via hard copy.
Okay. Can I ask you to look at a document which is MET 000016967? No, sorry, that's not it. This is MET 000016967. That's it. Now, first of all, can I ask you, do you think you've ever seen this document or something like it before?
I haven't seen that document, no.
Right. Let me see if I can help you, and perhaps I can't, but I'll try and summarise for you what's been said about this document so far to us. And it's an envelope, I think the front of an envelope, with handwriting on it, that Watch Manager Sadler says he got from a watch manager or station manager shortly after he started doing his exercise of collating FSG information outside the tower, which he was getting from the command unit by radio. And he also told us that he took a photograph of it, and in fact that's his mobile, he said. There's the shadow of it, you can see on the picture whereby he was taking the photograph. And he said that he took the photograph at 02:19, and then sent the envelope, the hard envelope, to the Bridgehead via a runner. And that's what he says about it. Watch Manager De Silvo told us that she didn't recall seeing it. So with that background, my question is, do you recollect seeing this at any point coming through your hands?
I recollect Charlie Battersby turning up with a list of numbers.
You do?
I do.
On a slip, a control information form or not?
He turned up with a list of numbers, and I remember him, and I said to him, "I've got these, Charlie."
Right.
The reason I can recall it is because I can remember 205 being mentioned, and I said, "I've got that one, Charlie." So that's the only one I remember, because I wrote it on the wall. If you've got a picture of the wall...
We have. We're coming to that.
Have you got a picture of the wall?
We are coming to that, but we do this...
It might be... I remember Charlie turning up with a list of numbers. I don't recall what the list was on, because it was in his hand.
Right.
I remember trying to cross-check the numbers to the slips that I had and the information that had come off the forward information board.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
But I don't want to... I really want to make it clear that I dealt with a lot of numbers that night.
I know you did.
So,
I know you did. And we are going to come back to this and compare this with the wall shortly. I just want to... I'm taking this in stages because I don't want to suggest things to you which aren't necessarily correct.
No.
That's why I'm asking you about your recollection unadorned. Do you recognise the handwriting?
No.
Do you know who Brett Loft IC is?
I know Brett
Loft,
Loft,
yeah. Do you remember that triggering a recollection as to his role at that time?
I don't recall seeing him.
Okay. Do you remember at all what you or Charlie Batterby did with this piece of paper?
Let's refer to it as a list of numbers,
All right.
rather than a piece of paper, because I'm not sure if it was this piece of paper.
Okay. Do you remember what he did with this list of numbers?
I seem to recall a cross-checking of the information I'd written on the wall and the information that was on the forward information board.
Okay.
And I seem to recall he was the person, he was looking at the forward information board. By this point, I already had a lot of slips that I was prioritising.
Okay. The list of numbers is on a piece of paper. Do you remember what happened to the piece of paper on which the list of numbers was written?
No.
Right. As I say, I'll come back to this in due course, and I've called it Sadler's envelope,
Okay.
just for shorthand. Can we just go back to your statement then, and go to page 8, which I said I'd come back to, and look at the 4th paragraph, where you say, and I'd like to look at the whole of that paragraph. It was agreed between Watch Manager Watson and I that he would be the middleman between me and Entry Control Officer. We decided that he would remain at the doorway on the mezzanine level, and I would shout up to him the flat number, floor number, and amount of people involved. He would record this information on notepaper and repeat what he wrote back to me, confirming it was correct. The notepaper would then be passed through to the Entry Control Officer, who would retain it and commit the BA crews to rescue accordingly. I would then indicate on my list which calls had been committed by writing BA next to them. Now, a number of questions I have about that. First of all, physically, where were you when you agreed that with Watch Manager Watson? Where were you standing?
I think, well, I was down by the wall, and I think, on reflection, I seem to recall that I got the first bundle of slips, and I was a bit kind of taken by the number I'd got. So I shouted up to him. I said, "Right, are you ready, Paul?" And I think that because he turned his back on me to do something, and I think he might have been attempting to write them down up at where he was as a log. And then between us, we agreed that actually the most effective way would be if he said, wait, I'll write them on my pad. And he took out his notepad and he wrote them on his notepad. So I would shout, and this proved to be a good system.
Right.
Clear, concise. He repeated it to me. We were in eye contact. I'd say to him the floor and flat number and people involved. He'd repeat exactly the same. And then on handing it through, he went, I've sent it through, Glynn. And then I'd write BA next to it.
Right. Did he disappear when handing it through? Did
No.
you see? Would he
It was
give
only a door, it was only a doorway.
Right. Did you see a hand come out from the doorway and take the piece of paper?
I mean, no, because of the angle of, I had a bit more, my attention was elsewhere dealing with the FSG.
Okay. And you actually saw him writing, did you?
Yes.
Did you shout up any information other than the flat number, the floor number, and number of persons, such as smoke density or smoke logging or anything like that?
On occasions, there might have been additional information that I added, but that would be too specific.
Right. Did you shout up all the information you had in relation to any given FSG?
Shouted out the pertinent information, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything you omitted? You chose to omit?
That's too specific.
Okay.
I mean, I would be... That's not how I communicate, so no.
Do you know roughly... Okay, let me ask it this way. Did you make this agreement with Watch Manager Watson before you started writing on the wall?
No, as I said, it kind of coincided with the first lot of numbers.
Right.
So the first lot of slips, I think that although I speak loud and clear, I can on occasion speak a bit quickly, and I think, and at which point, I think his intention was to log it on a wall, and he said, "Whoa, I'm not going to be able to do that." I think I think I got through the first two slips, And he said, well, wait, I'm going to write it on my pad.
Right.
And I said, yeah, brilliant. Write on your pad, and then we can.
Okay.
hand
Did
it."
you see him writing on the wall at the very beginning?
I saw him turn his back on me, so whatever he was, I mean,
Right.
I'd like to think he was not so rude not to look at me.
And so, just so I'm clear, you're by the front door to the lobby area of the tower, and he's on the mezzanine,
Yes.
on the balcony. Okay. And was your communication affected in any way by the noise, the ambient noise in the building?
No, I spoke very loudly and clearly, and he repeated at the same time.
You say in this paragraph, as we've just read, the note paper would then be passed through to the entry control officer, who would retain it and commit the BA crews to rescue accordingly. When you say who would retain it and commit the BA crews to rescue accordingly, did you see that or observe that happening, retention and committing?
No.
So are you saying that was that part of the plan, that you would assume that having had the piece of paper, the Bridgehead would act on it?
It's a process. I'm handing them information to save savable life.
Yeah.
That's going via Paul Watson. They need to commit BA crews.
Right. So just pinning it down, when you say who would retain it and commit the BA crews to rescue accordingly?
I'm referring to the Bridgehead officers,
Yeah.
Watch Manager O'Keefe and Watch Manager Silver.
Yeah. But it's really the word would. Are you saying that that's something you observed for yourself, that's what they would do? Or are you saying that was part of your plan, that's what they would do?
I don't entirely understand what you're asking me.
And what I'm asking you is was it the plan that these pieces of paper would be used to commit the BA crews, or
They would
was it
use
something
the
you actually
information.
observed for yourself?
No, the intention was that they would use the information off that piece of paper
Right.
to send the BA crew
Right.
to that location.
Yes.
So in the same way as one might send a radio message, you would be speaking directly to them. All this was a communication by paper.
Right. And we'll come to it in due course, but did you yourself observe anybody at the Bridgehead acting on the piece of paper
No,
that Paul Watson
not at
gave?
that stage.
Right. Later?
When it was brought to the ground floor level,
Yes.
obviously I would have line of sight then.
Right. Now, let's look at the wall. We've been using, so far, MET 000155815, which I'll just ask to be put up, only because it's the version we've been using. And there it is. I'd like, if we can, though, to work from a different version. Just before we leave that, is that the wall you were writing on when you started?
Yes.
Right. And is that the wall you wrote on all night until you left?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can we just look at some CCTV images to see if we can identify you? I think if we can minimise that, or perhaps put it on the side of the screen, Mr. Documents Director, and go please next to INQ 244. Can you identify yourself in that picture?
That's me against the wall.
Right. Now, the time mark for that adjusted is 02:15:53. Now, looking at the left-hand picture, and just enlarging it a little bit for us, you can see in the middle, at the top of the middle list, FSG 0215 there.
Correct.
Is that FSG at 2:15 the first thing you wrote on the wall?
It is.
It is. Now, minimise that again and go back to the picture. At that stage, we see no sign of any forward information board next to you.
That's correct.
That's in accordance with your recollection, is it?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Now, if you go to the next picture, which is 0245, this is timed 2 minutes later at 021706. That's the adjusted time. Can you identify you in that picture?
I'm wearing a white hat next to someone with the tabard on.
Right. Now we see somebody from wearing a command unit tabard immediately behind you, which I don't know if you can identify him.
No idea.
No.
I don't remember seeing him.
Right. And then there's a crew manager in the foreground of the picture holding what looks like white pieces of paper. I mean, that's me, but making an assumption. Can you help us with that?
Can you zoom in on it?
We know it's a crew manager because of the double black stripe on the helmet.
Yeah, no, I thought I might recognise who it is. No, I don't know.
Right. At the stage you started writing 0215, did you already have the batch that the first runner had brought back to you in excess of 20 slips from the command unit?
It doesn't look like it.
Right. When you wrote 215 on the wall, did you have any slips at all?
Well, having seen this, clearly not.
Right. When you say, what's your
my recollection was that I did have slips,
Yes.
but having seen the CCTV, it seems not. So I might have put the time up
Right.
as commencement. My recollection was that I had some slips.
Okay. Do you recall whether the person who brought back the first batch of slips to you, let me put it this way, do you remember whether the person who brought back the slips to you was a firefighter or an officer?
The person who I tasked as my runner was a firefighter,
Yes.
and my recollection is that he was the first person that brought back the slips.
That's your recollection. Okay.
But as I say, it's my recollection of the CCTV would support a more accurate picture.
Right. Now, there appears to be on the floor, and we can look at both of the pictures actually, in fact, let me do it this way, look at 256. Go back to 256, if we can. Because I'm interested in the little bit of white something on the floor. If you go back to 256, which is when you come into the building. No, that is 244, which I do want to look at in a moment. It's 256. Right. Now, that you told us was you coming into the building.
It was.
And that we got at 1:55.
Correct.
Now, if you look, on the floor, there are two hoses and a white object. Do you know what that might be?
No.
Do you remember seeing a white object, possibly a piece of paper?
That's my entry into the building.
Yes, exactly.
No.
Okay. Then if we look at 244, you're writing there, and if we just have you enlarged, it looks as if your left heel is standing on a white object. Does that help you identify what it might be?
No.
Right, okay. Now, going back to your witness statement at page 8, you say at the bottom of the page, and we can take both of those pictures off the screen and go back to the witness statement. At the very bottom of page 8 of your statement, you say, the station manager who had led me in and out of the tower was now managing the main entrance.
Mm.
The foyer was clear and well lit, but whenever the station manager opened the main entrance, smoke from the fallen debris wafted in, creating a light haze. Have we seen the station manager in any of the photographs we've looked at so far?
I mean, no. I don't know who the chap was in the tabard.
No.
So,
Okay.
I don't think that was him.
Okay, all right. Now, can I just... I'm so sorry to do this. You go back to the two pictures we looked at before. 15815 and the photograph at 245, which is timed at 0217. Now, in the photograph at 0217, on the right-hand side of the screen we have here, you can see that on the left of the door is a sign on the wall which says Grenfell Tower Community Room.
Yeah.
But when we look at the photograph on the left of our screen here today, which is a photograph taken after the incident, the sign has disappeared, or it
Yeah.
looks as if it's disappeared. Can you help us with that?
I can't.
Do you remember whether anybody took the sign down at any stage during the night?
I don't know.
To the best of your
Well, it's not there. So
No.
at some point it was taken down, but I have no recollection of it being taken down.
so to your recollection, that sign was there throughout the time you were writing on the wall. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I can. Yeah, actually, I can vouch for why it was. You see in this picture.
Yes, left to the left of the screen. Yes.
Yeah. So if you just move your cursor up slightly.
That's 15815. Yes.
Sorry, if you just you see the grid there.
The grid next
See
to
this
the
grid here.
Yes.
That's the last thing that I drew, and I drew it there because the sign was above it.
Okay, I see.
So it would have been removed post 4:30ish.
Right. Thank you. Now, staying on, or going back to perhaps, image 246, if I can just ask you to look at 246, which is an adjusted time of 021717, you're now writing on the wall.
I am.
So I put that to you because I think we've got there by now. Do you know who is writing, well, first of all, who is on your right?
I've got a feeling that's Charlie Batterby. Crew manager Batterby. But I'm not 100%.
Did you do any FSG work with any crew manager other than Charlie Batterby?
It's really hard to recall.
Okay. Now, are you right-handed?
I am.
And is that you writing, is that your hand in the upper part of the photograph?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the crew manager has in his left hand?
Looks like
or her
he's
left
got
hand?
a piece of paper, and it looks like he might be cross-checking something off that piece of paper.
Can I ask the documents director to magnify that image so we can focus in on the piece of paper and Charlie or the crew manager's right hand? Was the crew manager writing on the wall as well as you?
I would not think. I do not recall someone else writing next to me, because that list that I started writing initially, you can see from the picture, this picture. So this is the first list I wrote,
Yes.
and then I went on to this list.
Well, I'm going to come to that in
So
a minute.
for that person to be here would mean that he was writing something here.
Yes.
But this is my this is my writing. Don't recall that. That's written about me, and I don't recall.
Yes.
I don't recall anything. That's my writing. So I don't recall whatever was written here.
Yeah.
So by the process of eliminating this information, I would suggest he's not writing.
Right, okay. I'm not going to describe for the transcript what you've just pointed out, but we'll have to look at the video, I'm afraid.
Oh, sorry.
That's quite all right.
All right,
It's
thank
helpful.
you for help.
Apologies.
It's helpful.
No,
This is a
don't worry.
semi-visual experience, I think, for all of us. So
I thought
we'll have to
because it's
live with
being live streamed, we could just...
it is, so we can
Not
do
do
that.
Yes, we can go and look at it again.
Exactly. I'm going to come to the order in which these lists went onto the wall shortly. I'm just trying to get an idea of who was helping you with this. In your statement, you say that and this is page 9, this is the third paragraph in page 9, after you refer to the firefighter coming back with in excess of 20 slips, you say, we can just go back to your statement, so page 9, third paragraph, you say, I started to transfer the FSG information on the onto the wall and implement the system Watch Manager Watson and I had agreed earlier.
Yeah.
Had agreed on earlier. Now, looking at the picture we've just seen at INQ 246, is that what we see happening there? The photograph we've just looked at?
Yeah. So the image of me writing on the wall.
Right.
So as I said to you, my recollection was that the information, I'd got the slips and I started transferring, and I was calling up the information to Paul Watson, and then I would transfer it.
Now, just picking up on that last answer and going to a picture, if we can look at 247, INQ 247. And just enlarging you and the person with you, you can just get a better view. You may actually be able to identify.
Yeah, that's Charlie Batterby.
That's Charlie Batterby.
Yeah.
And what are you doing?
So it looks like I've transferred. It looks like we've had a relay of communication, and I would think that I was making sure that we had shared accurate information. It happened throughout the night where I would want to make sure that the information was precise. There was no misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do that by putting my finger on whichever number I'm pointing at and saying, it is this number on this floor and it's this many people involved. And he would cross-check that with me.
Okay. Now, if you're right, and that's Charlie Batterby, does that mean that Charlie Batterby was the person who came to you first with the first batch of slips?
I think it's feasible. It looks like he's got a number of slips. It looks like there's a number of slips in his hand. So yeah, it's feasible. It wasn't what I recollected. That was not how I recall the sequence of events, but it was a long night.
Right. And did you know, or did you find out where Charlie Batterby, if that's him, got those slips from?
That is Charlie Batterby.
Right.
And I would expect that to have come from a command unit, as I've referred to earlier on.
Right. Charlie, did Charlie Batterby tell you that he'd got them from Paul Sadler standing outside?
No, he didn't.
He didn't. Can we look at the next picture, 249? I just want to move this on a little bit ahead, just to see whether... Right. Now, just looking at you,
Yeah.
what are you doing there, do you know?
Firefighter had just come down the stairs with my recollection is not that she was wearing breathing apparatus, but I do recall seeing her eyes really wide open.
Right.
And I suspect that the reason I recall that is because she had a face mask on and all I could see was her eyes.
Right. You remember seeing that, do you?
I gave her my helmet.
Okay. And that's your helmet?
Yes, it is.
is this the second, or a second set bag? Or the contents of a second set bag, do you think?
Sorry?
Are these the contents of a second set bag, do you think?
That's a breathing apparatus set.
Right. I thought that the contents of a second set bag were a spare BA.
I don't know whether a second set bag is... A second set bag is a Duraskin bag that's used to wrap a breathing apparatus set up to transport it safely when carrying out, when being carried into an incident.
Yeah.
I can't see a second set bag there, so I would suggest that it's just the spare breathing apparatus set that's been used to assist the young lady out of a toxic environment.
Right. Now, you said before that you had no training at all about how to take a person through a highly toxic environment. But does that include, just going back to that question, does that include using a spare BA to give to a resident or occupant of a building to take them through a highly toxic environment?
Inherently, the spare breathing apparatus set we use is for firefighter emergency. So we're trained in how to rescue our own, and whether that be in the form, if they have a malfunction of their breathing apparatus set which requires them to either have a transfer of face mask or connect into a spare breathing apparatus set. That's the primary purpose of that second set bag. It looks to me that if a young lady has been brought out with a spare BA set, it looks like somebody has probably used their initiative to transport her through a toxic environment with safe air.
So when you say use their initiative, does that mean that you actually get no training and there's no policy in the use of supply of casualties with BA systems? Did you or others consider repeating this example of providing BA sets to residents or sharing access to firefighter oxygen?
You would have to speak to the watch officers that were doing that role.
Yeah.
I wasn't involved with that. I was involved with fire.
When you were doing your prioritization, as you told us earlier on, did you think about using this methodology to assist residents out through the toxic environment?
When I referred to prioritization, I was talking about the way in which I would transfer and communicate the information I received via the control information form, not how the rescue would be prioritized.
Right. Okay. And who would have decided? Who would have decided whether or not to deploy a second set for the use of
I would
helping
imagine
residents
the
out?
senior ranking officers at the Bridgehead.
At the Bridgehead.
I would, yeah.
Okay.
That's where they're carrying out the rescue operation.
Now, on page... sorry. On page... no, let's go to another photograph. Let's look at 252, INQ 252, and I'll come back to page 9 of your statement in a moment. If you go to page 252, photograph 252, that has an adjusted time of 2:20:24 seconds. We see, I think it's you. Can you confirm for us that that's you holding some pieces of paper?
I can, yeah.
Can you just enlarge the pieces of paper for us, Mr. Documents Director, and we may be able to identify them? What do you think those are?
Control information forms?
Right, and there seems to be a smaller piece of paper. There's a little rectangle coming off the larger pieces of paper. Do you remember comparing a small piece of paper with large pieces of paper?
Are you sure that's not just a form folded up?
I don't know.
I would suggest that is a control information form folded up, and I'm going through the numbers.
Okay. Now, let's look at the wall, if we can, and I'd like to use, not the picture we've been using so far on the left, but a clearer version, which we have at MET 0005774. And that is what I'm going to use to ask you questions about it. 5774.
Yeah.
Did you write all of the information that you received onto the wall? and nowhere else.
So what was the last bit? And no one else.
Yeah, nowhere else.
The information you see on the wall was, the majority of it was written by me. However, Station Manager Pete Wolfenden, once he joined me, also wrote information on the left-hand list.
On the left hand. And that, I'm going to come to that because I think that's later on, but we'll come to that. Did you start with a list in your hand, or did you put them up as they came to you? Did you start with an existing list? In other words, writing a list from a list, or did you write your list from numbers as they came to you individually?
So, as I mentioned in my statement, the ideal would have been if I could have replicated what we've got on the forward information board, and that's a big grid. So there's a pattern. There was no, when I got the slips, there was no pattern. There was no, I couldn't decipher a way of prioritising them,
Right.
other than just doing them one by one as I received them.
Now, on this picture, and tell me if this is wrong, but let's just try and get the scheme of the wall, first of all. Under FSG 215, I think you said before that the list of flat numbers and floors immediately under the words FSG is what you started with.
Correct.
That's right, is it? Okay. Now, on the very far left of that list, you've got, just take 205 for the moment, you've got BA tick F. Is that part of the first list, or is that part of the list on the left?
See the vertical line that separates that? The list to the right of that is the first list. The list to the left of that is the second list.
Okay. So where we see BA tick F, that goes with 205. It doesn't go with 113, 123.
Correct.
Right. So that's the first list. Which is the next list that you drew, looking at the wall generally?
I think you've got it up there. You mean the collation of information?
Yes.
So the list directly under FSG goes vertically down,
Yes.
and then the list to the left of it goes vertically down,
Yes.
and then in the latter part of my attendance at the incident, we drew a grid. I drew a grid, and that was where we were cross-checking information
Right.
in a grid format.
Can you tell me about the list on the very far right of this picture? You see that there's a 94 in brackets.
I didn't write that.
When you say that, do you mean the 94 in brackets or the list to the left of it? Just to be clear.
I can't
Let me
really
be clear.
see the
You
list.
see there's a 94 in brackets, and then there's a list to the left of the 94 in brackets. Did you write that?
I did not write the 94 in brackets. I did write 1918. Sorry, I couldn't see it on the computer screen. I did write the list that is. Yeah, that is.
Right. When do you think you wrote
In the
that
latter
list?
stages of the incident, it would have been between 4 and a half, 4, I think.
Right. Okay.
Maybe. Yeah. You would have to use some CCTV, but it would have been roughly between 4 and 4:30.
Okay. Now, going back to the centre list, or rather going back to the general picture, so can we take it then that the order in which you wrote these lists up was middle list,
Correct.
list on the left, and then the list on the right next to the 94?
No. So, the middle list.
Yes?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Middle, left, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, there is a grid. If you go to, I'd like to use I'd like to use a different photograph for this. There is a grid, I just want to show you, which is MET 00057776. We just look at that. Just clear this away. Now, that's the very far right of the same wall, as I think is obvious. And you've got the 94 there in the list to the left of it we've just been looking at. And to the right of the 94 in brackets, there's a looks like someone's written a tower, or drawn in rough hand, a tower with floor numbers up to 23.
Yeah.
Did you write that?
I think I began drawing that,
Right.
and I think that's an accurate timestamp in which I left, because you can see it says 0430 cleared.
It says 0430 cleared, that's
Yeah.
floor 5, and then floor 4 says 0402 cleared.
Yeah.
Do you think you wrote those?
I think that I didn't write that,
Right.
but I think that I left the incident at the time in which we were receiving that information.
Okay, all right. But do you think you did write the
I think I drew the
the
rectangle.
tower? Okay. Now let's go back then to 5774.
Am I allowed to mark this statement? Am I allowed to note?
Yes,
something there?
yes.
Yeah, of course, come.
Thank you.
Okay. At the point at which you started writing your first list, and we can see you started with 205, did you know how the flat and floor numbering system worked?
No.
Now, on page 9 of your statement, and I don't think I need to take you to it, but I can if you want, you say that you looked around for a floor plan plaque, but didn't find one.
I, in viewpoint, looked around.
Right, okay. Did not having a plaque hamper your efforts?
It would have been more helpful to have a plaque.
Yeah. Did you ask for one?
In an open request, I said, can anyone see a floor plan?
Right, okay. And as you wrote, were you shouting up, well, you told us you were shouting up to Watch Manager Watson. Did you shout each number individually up to him, or did you shout in batches?
Went through it individually. He
Right.
wrote them down individually. We confirmed them individually.
Okay. Now, can I just ask you about some... Mr. Chairman, can I just say, we can go to 1 o'clock, that would be very helpful to me, if the witness is happy with that.
Well, are you happy at the moment, Mr. Williams?
Yeah.
1 o'clock's only 7 minutes
Oh,
away,
yeah, yeah.
so
That's fine.
yes, you carry on.
Right, okay. Now, I just want to get an idea of the symbols that you've used.
Yeah.
Could you first of all tell us what BA means? I'm looking in the middle list to the left-hand most part of that middle list, where you've written BA. What does that signify?
It means that BA have been committed to that
Now,
location.
Does that mean that you had been told that a BA crew had been deployed to flat 205? We're looking at the first one by way of example only.
It means that the information that I passed through to the Bridgehead regarding the FSG on 205 had been passed through, and I was told that a BA crew had been committed.
To that flat?
I can only confirm to you the information that I passed and the information I got back.
Right.
So, and I can't confirm to you if that is the brief that they were given, because if the Bridgehead commander decided that they didn't want to use the fire survival guidance information that I had provided, then I cannot confirm to you that they were committed to that flat. But as far as I was aware, the information being passed from me via Paul Watson to the Bridgehead, where it says BA, a BA crew were committed to that location.
Right. Who told you that a BA crew had been committed to any particular flat, which led you to mark BA? Who told you?
Well, the BA crew went through to the obviously, I'm sure you're fully aware of the dimensions in which they were working in the stairwell. So the BA crew went through at the same time as the slip. So the BA crew were being committed with that information.
How did you, sorry, who told?
So that information was coming back via Paul Watson
Right.
to say, yeah, they're committed, next. And we
Right.
would go through the list.
So just so I understand the sequence of events, you would shout up to Paul Watson,
I would.
flat 205,
Correct.
for example. He would then, is this right, confirm
Yes.
to you, got it,
Yeah.
write a slip,
Yes.
and would then shout down to you, deployed, or something like
He
that?
would hand the slip to the BA crew. He would tell them to go through to the Bridgehead. This is the FSG information
Right.
we've got. They would go through to the Bridgehead, and he would say, right, they've gone through.
They've
So,
gone
okay.
through,
Yeah.
okay.
He wasn't committing them. It's
No.
for the entry control to commit them.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there
what,
may have
what it
been.
really means then is he's told you he's dispatched a BA crew to the Bridgehead
Correct.
with the slip of paper
With
taking
that information,
your
yeah,
information.
absolutely.
Right. So to be clear, when you write BA, that is not because you know that a crew has been committed to 205. It's
No.
because you've been told by Paul Watson that a crew has been sent to the Bridgehead
It's for my
that
own
pur-
records.
For that purpose.
Yeah.
Yes, I see. Turning to the tick, what does that represent?
The tick represents. Tick represents that according to the information I got back, that they made it that a crew got to where they believed the 23rd floor was. However, that said, I assume we're going to move on to the correlation of casualties coming out. What information that I began to receive as time went on was it became nigh on impossible to correlate where survivors were coming from versus where I was passing the information for BA crews to be committed.
Yeah. Just going back to the tick, what information did you have that led you to put the tick on the wall?
As the BA crews were exiting, I would ask them, where have they come from? Where did you get to? Where did you go?
So that wasn't coming from Paul Watson, it was coming direct from crews, was it?
It would come from the crew. They would. What's the answer? It would come from the crew because it became apparent to me very quickly that if that the only way that we could, I mean, in my statement, I'm jumping ahead.
No, it does jump. We'll come to it. It's the
It
black
came
market
very
one.
clear, very quickly that the information going in was clear and concise, but actually I wasn't fully aware of the confusion that was taking place in the tower.
Yeah.
So the information coming back was not accurate.
Okay. But I think my question is simply, what was the source of the information that led you to put the tick up there? And you've said it was the returning crews.
Returning crews, yeah.
So not Paul Watson or anybody at the Bridgehead.
No, but it might be through third party. I might have asked a firefighter, where have they come from? And they're telling me.
Right.
So it's not. I might have spoken to one of the residents. Where have you come from? Which floor did you come from? And
At the time, how reliable did you think that information was, given that it was coming from returning firefighters or residents who had come down the building?
it became apparent very quickly that the
Right.
information was not that accurate.
And did you continue, after discovering that it wasn't that accurate, to put ticks up?
Yeah, because I made sure that I asked pertinent questions to the crews that would give me the best the best chance of identifying whether we did it, whether we got there or not.
Right. Did you observe, are you familiar with the signs of metabolic heat stress in crews?
Yeah.
Did you observe any signs? Having observed signs on crews, could you be sure, or could you be reasonably sure that the information they were giving you was accurate?
No.
Right. But you still continued to put the ticks up?
I had to do something. It isn't just about, I mean, let's be very clear. It is a priority to rescue people who need our rescuing. But we're asking our firefighters to ascend a tower to their potential death. It's really important that we don't do that needlessly. So the collation of any information I can get, I would do. So the ticks was the best case. If they could tell me that that's where they've been, then I have to acknowledge that.
Was there a risk, though, that by putting up a tick where the information wasn't reliable or accurate, that might mean that there would be no further deployment to that flat?
It became apparent to me very quickly that something had to be done. We had to correlate where the survivors had come from. And I go into my statement, I called for a marker pen so that I could mark on their head or their arm the floor number or flat number, so that we could identify where people have come from, so that we could correlate this information. And this all happened very quickly, very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's probably time for a break, Mr. Chairman. That's beyond my allotted.
It's a reasonably convenient point, is it?
Well, it doesn't matter. I think it's
Right.
lunchtime.
I think it's time we had a break. We're going to stop now and then, Mr. Williams. Please don't talk to anyone over the break, or at least about your evidence. You can talk about other things, of course. And we'll come back at 2:05, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, 2:05 then, please. Thank you.